Hello my dear learners, welcome to Learn Microbiology. We are doing a series of video on what next after BSc Microbiology. Today in this video we will be discussing about the GATB entrance examination for admission to the MSc course, and we are going to solve the mock test which is available on the website of the GATB. First, you need to type this link on your Google Chrome website. Students, you can also access the mock test in your phone. You can find the link for the mock test in the description box. Moving ahead, you can see in this place, here there will be a system generated code number which will be given to you on the day of your exam, and here you will find your name as well as your subject, and here you will have your photo. If these three things you couldn't find on the day of your exam, then please contact the invigilator. Then you will be asked to enter the login ID and the password which will be provided to you on the day of exam, and then you have to click on this option which is called as sign in. Now here this mock test takes us to a new window, and you will be able to access this at least 15 minutes before the start of exam, wherein you will be allowed to read these instructions. Now let's understand the instructions before solving the test. As you can see, this entire exam is for 180 minutes, that is 3 hours, and you will have a clock or a timer at one of the end, that is the top right corner of the screen, and then when the timer is 0, this examination will end by itself if you do not submit it before time. And if you see, there is a question palette, and this question palette has certain indications. There are certain symbols. This symbol means that you have not yet visited the question. If you see a red color symbol, it means you have not answered that question. Whereas if you see a green colored symbol, it means that you have answered a question. Students, you can also mark a question for review. For example, you don't remember the answer right now, but you want to come back later, then you can click on this option mark for review, and that question number will appear in this purple color. But if you remember the answer, you answered something, but then you again want to come back and recheck it, then you can click for marked for review after answering the question. Then you will be having a symbol like this. So this particular symbol is very important when you are solving your exam. So you keep this in mind. Now let's go to see these all instructions you can read even in your mock test as well. I will discuss these things even directly in the mock test. Shall we click on next? Once I click on next, I will go to this particular window wherein some important instructions regarding your question paper is displayed. There are 2 sections. Section A is going to have 60 multiple choice questions which are going to be compulsory, and these questions will be from physics, chemistry, maths and biology which you have studied at your 12th standard level, which will be given for 60 marks, that is 1 mark each. One important thing, if there is a negative marking, so you will have half marks deducted for every wrong answer of section A. Coming to section B, which will have 100 questions, and you have to attempt only 60 questions. Take this in mind, you have to attempt only 60 questions, and these questions will be from biology, life science, biotechnology and allied areas. And your maximum marks is 180, that is you will be having 3 marks for each question, and if you do a wrong answer, so there is a negative marking of 1 mark for each wrong answer. Okay, after you read this, you can see over here there is a checkbox, and once you click on this button, I am ready to begin is activated. We will click on that, and now this will take us to the questions. Okay, here is it. So once it is done, your question starts. The first thing you need to notice is the time over here. The timer has already started. Let me quickly make you understand few things of this. See, here you can see your exam you can see the entire number of questions, how much you have answered, how much you have not answered, how many not visited by clicking on this I button. In between your exam, if you feel you want to see how many questions you have answered, you can do by this method. Similarly, you have similar thing on each section. Each section you can find how many questions you have answered and all. And this is very helpful in section B because you just have to answer only 60 questions. So you can find out easily by clicking on this. Moving on, this is one more important thing, that is there is a calculator. In the exam, you will be not allowed to take anything inside your exam hall except your identification. Okay, so in that case, you will be not able to carry calculator. So you have to not worry because you have an on-screen calculator. If you click on this calculator, can you see here there is a scientific calculator getting active, and you can see this exactly works as your scientific calculator. So no need to worry, this calculator is already there in your exam portal itself. So for time being, I'll close this, and here you can see your name as well as your photograph, and these are all those items marked are already present here, and these are all question palette. Since first I have selected section A, so it is going to show me all the 60 questions of section A. And if I select section B here, I can go here, I can see all the 100 questions of section B. So it depends on you which section you need to solve first. At the end, I am also going to share few tips, so stay tuned and watch the entire video. Another important thing that many students don't know is, you can see here there is an option called as question paper. This is very important when we are solving section B because you have to answer only 60 questions out of 100. So here you can directly find out which question you have to answer and directly go to that question number and answer it. I'll just click on this. Can you see the entire question paper along with the question number is displayed? Can you see here? You can easily see in this. This is all about 60 questions from your section A, and then you can see section B, all the questions, right? It's too handy, right? So many students don't know this trick. Okay, so if you feel that okay, I can just check it out, okay, this 87 number I easily know. What you will do, you don't have to go next, directly go to 87 question number and just click on it. That question is available for you to answer. So easy enough, right? Okay, now I'll just quickly tell you how to answer a question here. This is for selecting a question. Number 1 I selected and I feel the answer number 3rd is correct. So I'll click on this, and after that I have to go for save and next. Okay. But if you feel this answer, you want to check it again, if I say I'll just save and next, you can see it becomes green. It means I have answered this question. Coming to question 2, I don't know this answer, but I want to come again. So I'll click on mark for review and next, and you can see this becomes that purple color. And 3rd question, I think the answer is true, but then I am not sure. I want to come back. So I'll answer the question, but I will mark it for review, and see that is how it happens. So remember, there are 2 options. One is mark for review, one is save and next. These 2 things will be saved. And there is one more called as clear response. For example, you answered 3, but then you think no, you have to delete that answer. Then what you need to do? You can just select the correct answer. Okay, it can happen. But now in case of section B, wherein you don't want to answer a question, then you can just click on clear response. So that clear response happens, and then you can go for save and next. Okay, so I think I have explained almost all the things. It is very important, and now comes the important part, that is how to solve this paper. Before solving, we will be doing in this particular video, we will be going through to solve section B questions. We will be solving few questions from the section B. Before starting to solve, I am going to give you certain tips. Okay, I am going to give you certain tips for preparation. Now, these tips I have learned from my own experience. Whenever I have to prepare for any entrance exam, what strategy I have been using, the same strategy I am sharing with you today. Remember students, usually when we have to go for any entrance exam, immediately after our graduation, we are not having enough time for preparation. As we can see even today, for this preparation of GATB exam, we are having hardly few weeks left. So we cannot go for this entire syllabus. If you have seen the syllabus is very huge, and we cannot sit and study each and every topic. It will take lot of time, and even at the end of the time we will not remember what we studied on day 1. Exactly right. So what can we do? So one of the approach which I used for preparing for my entrance exams which I have given, what I used to do is I used to take a previous year solved question paper, and then I used to solve this question paper. For example, if I see question number 1 is related to enzyme, I will solve that question and then I will go to my notes and I will read little bit about enzymes on the same day. So similarly, I used to solve 10 to 15 to 20 questions each day, and not only solve 20 questions but I also used to cover 20 topics. I hope you have got the trick. So that is a wonderful trick, because what happens is the topics which questions were asked in the previous exam, similar topics questions will be asked, and they will just change few things, but then the concept remains same. This I have experienced in lot of entrance exams. And students, you all should feel fortunate because GATB has given you a mock exam, and this mock paper is very important for you, because if you just solve all those 100 questions of these, you will not just solve 100 questions but you will cover 100 topics. So what you should do? Today in this video I will solving few questions for you, and what all questions I have solved, check out which topic it is from, and once you solve that question, go back to this topic and read few things from that topic. And importantly, take a small notebook with you or a small sheet of paper, whatever is better for you, or you can, even if you don't like writing, you can just use your phone. You can open any application wherein you can write, and there you just jot down few points. Don't write an entire paragraph. Students, it is very difficult to study during your preparation. Just note a few points. For example, you have asked a question like what is the function of this particular enzyme, and you have solved the question and you have answered it. Now what you will do, go back to the notes which you have for enzymes and just read out what is an enzyme, what are types of enzymes, what is a inhibitor, what types of inhibitor. Just go through and just jot down important points, or you can jot down few words which are important, and this will give you an entire set of notes for your revision on the day before your exam. That is how it's very handy work. So this hardly takes 15 to 20 days is more than enough if you plan it accordingly and prepare for the GATB exam. Moreover, I would like to tell you this is very prestigious exam, because in any student who is admitted on this DBT supported program, you might have observed in my previous video that I have mentioned that this student will receive a stipend per month. For MSc Biotech, you receive a 5,000 rupees stipend per month. So it is like learn and earn. Isn't it very interesting? And even the fee payment and all you don't have to hunt for pocket money. Okay, so that is how this exam is. So take this exam seriously. The 20 days or few days is left for preparation. Prepare it wholeheartedly, and I definitely can see you can definitely do better than this. Okay. Coming back, can you see here, there is a question here, an allosteric inhibitor affects the active site of an enzyme by which of the following, and you are given some amino acid loops. If you just read the options, can you see the options are something unrelated? The options are not at all for this question. So there is some problem with this particular mock test. I'll just show you a few other questions. Let me take you to this. There was one question for solving. Okay, so can you see here, there is one numerical question here, and you have to find what is the viable count of the bacterial cell, and what are the options: entropy, enthalpy, what? Okay, so this means that the options for all these questions which are given in this particular portal is jumbled up. So it's like for one question they have given the options of another question. Are you worried right now? Don't be worried, because I have chosen the questions as well as the correct options, and they are going to solve according to that only. So don't worry. So stay tuned. We will be solving few questions from the section B. Okay. Let me start with question number 1. Here is the question with the correct options. Question is, an allosteric inhibitor affects the active site of an enzyme by which of the following? Okay, before just going onto this particular options, I will just want to describe what is this allosteric inhibitor. Students, don't worry, this is nothing new to us. We have already learned. If you remember, it is well and good. If you don't remember, I am going to take you for a quick revision by this particular figure. Can you just see this? What I will do is I will just zoom it for you so you can see better. Okay. So all these particular geometric shapes are nothing but just representation of our enzyme. This yellow color one is our enzyme, and this particular orange triangle is our substrate. So as we know, whenever our enzyme have to bind to the substrate, it binds at the site called as the active site. So once our particular, you can see over here, once this particular enzyme and the substrate bind, this is how it looks, our enzyme substrate complex, which will later form the product. But there is one more site. This particular site, which is called as B, is called as an allosteric site, because at this site there is something called this particular is going to bind, which is called as the allosteric inhibitor. Now see what happens when this allosteric inhibitor binds to this allosteric site. See what happened? It changed our active site, and now our substrate cannot bind to it. So I think you might have understood from this that allosteric inhibitor is an inhibitor which binds to our enzyme at an allosteric site, which is not in the active site, but what it does, it will change the conformation of the active site so that our substrate cannot bind to the enzyme. I think this revision is enough. Okay, so let's come back. Now let's go to the options. I think you can easily find the answer now. Allosteric inhibitor affect the active site of an enzyme by which of the following? You just have to find out which is the correct answer. I'll just take a pen. Okay, the first option said it binds to the active site. No. We just discussed that it doesn't bind to this. So the first option is wrong. Moving to the second option, it binds to a second site resulting in a conformation change which makes the active site of the enzyme less accommodating to the substrate. What this means? That it is telling us that allosteric inhibitor bind to some another site, second site, and this results in the conformation change of the active site. That's correct, right? And that's because of that the substrate cannot accommodate on that. So that is actually our correct answer. So see how easy it was. Let's even check what they are asking in the question number 3. It modifies the substrate? No. None of the inhibitor has the ability to modify the substrate. They have to do something with the enzyme. The option 4, it says it carries a chemical modification to the enzyme which prevents progression for. See, whenever there is a modification, there is always a conformation modification. There is never chemical modification. Okay, so I think this is understood. The first question is clear now. Okay, let's move on to the question number 2. And here is the question 2. Phosphorylation controls the protein activity by which of the following reasons? Okay, so what happens, students, whenever we read such questions, we get so much of confused and we just skip the question. But see, just you have to read the question with open mind. Okay, it's very simple. Just see what is asked. Phosphorylation. So I hope you might know that phosphorylation means addition of phosphate group. Now when phosphorylation takes place or addition of phosphate group takes place to what? Protein. Now this controls the protein activity by what? First, it's saying it adds energy to the protein, it induces conformational change, or this negative charges prevents the other negative charges from interacting, or phosphate group degrades the protein. Okay, I hope you just consider that you don't know this. I'll just take you to a diagram. Okay, so this is our protein P. Okay, this is protein in circular form. And what is this phosphorylation? It is addition of phosphate. And who will give phosphate? It is always ATP. So we have our ATP which will give its phosphate to our compound or our protein, and always phosphate transferase enzyme is always what? It is kinase. I hope you remember this. And now once the phosphate is transferred, so what happened to a protein? A protein has changed to somewhat like this. It means our conformation of protein has changed. Yes or no? And now if by the action of another enzyme called as phosphatase, if this phosphate is removed, then what will happen? This will take back to this protein. So now I hope this much is clear. Let's get back to the options. Okay. So option 1 was it add energy to the protein. Do you think energy is added? See, many students get confused here because we say that phosphate is added from ATP. Students feel that energy is added. No. Energy is not added. We are just adding phosphate. So this option is wrong. Moving on to the second question. It can induce conformational change in the target protein. Yes, that's what we saw, right? But you can see the word can. It means not all phosphatase will induce, but some of this particular phosphorylation can induce conformation. So we can say this can be a probable right answer, right? But let's check the other options also. Okay, so whenever you solve any options, if you feel one option is correct and you have not read the next options, do go and read them. Okay, unless and until other options are wrong, you cannot claim that whatever option you feel correct is actually correct. Okay, let's move to the next. Two negative charges of phosphate group prevents other negatively charged molecules from interacting with the protein. As we know, phosphate is having negative charges. We all know, right? Phosphate has bonds with various oxygen molecules, and when these oxygen molecules having negatively charged, it's natural to feel that we have phosphate negative charge, so it's negative is the right answer. But here it is not, because these negative charges do not prevent this other from interacting protein. This is not the correct option. Moving to the next, phosphate group degrades the target proteins. See, phosphate group either activates or inactivates the protein but doesn't degrade the protein. We have another group of protein, which is ubiquitin protein is there, which is phosphorylated for degradation of target protein, but this is not an ubiquitin protein. So this option again will be wrong. So we have got our correct option, that is option number 2, that phosphorylation can induce a conformation change in the target protein. So I hope you have got the answer correct. Let's move to the question number 3. Which of the following classes of enzyme add a phosphate group to another protein? Okay, this is just exactly the similar to whatever we saw in the last previous. We saw in the previous slide that there was an enzyme called as kinase which transfer a phosphate group from ATP. Okay, we transfer phosphate group from ATP, it takes phosphate group from ATP and then transfer this ATP phosphate. It transfers only the phosphate from this ATP to our protein. Correct? So now we have to tell what is the class of this enzyme. We saw it is kinase enzyme which does the work. So now as we know, there are 7 classes of enzymes, and we have to find out to which class this particular enzyme kinase belongs to. Most of the time you need to remember, but sometimes it is easy to guess. I'll just put here all the 7 classes of enzymes. Enzyme oxidoreductases class. The enzymes in this class will carry out a redox reaction which is called as oxidation as well as reduction. Transferase is that group of enzymes wherein they transfer one particular group from one molecule to the another molecule. Hydrolysis is basically breaking of bonds with the addition of water. Lyases enzyme will also break the bond, but there is no addition of water. Isomerases enzymes, they will convert one molecule to its isomer. For example, glucose can be converted to fructose, which is that particular enzyme we can see in our glycolysis, correct? And next, ligase. Ligase enzyme is the enzyme which is going to join the bond. If there are 2 components A and B, and ligase enzyme form a bond between A and B, correct? Next we have translocase. Translocase enzymes are those enzymes which are not present in all organisms, but they are just important for translocating or movement of molecules from one particular organelle to another organelle or through the membrane. Okay, so that is exactly the description of the enzymes. So I hope now you might have guessed which will be the correct answer. So what they asked, which class of enzyme add a phosphate group to another protein, and we know that addition of phosphate group means it is transferring the phosphate from this ATP and then to this protein. So this definitely belongs to which group? Transferase. So our oxidoreductase is wrong, isomerase is wrong, as well as ligase is wrong. So our answer is transferase. Shall we move to the question number 4? The reaction between dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to form fructose 1,6-biphosphate is best described as dash. Okay, so this particular molecules, dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, you have encountered in your glycolysis, correct? Wherein from fructose 1,6, remember, from fructose 1,6-biphosphate, by the action of aldolase enzyme, this particular molecule breaks down to form glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone. So now they are asking, out of this, which particular reaction best suits them, best described as. Okay, they are not saying exactly, but best described as. Just look here. This was our fructose 1,6-biphosphate, which was by the action of aldolase, which is getting broken down to form your dihydroxyacetone as well as your glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay, now Here they are saying the reaction between DHAP and glycerol 3-phosphate to form fructose 1,6-biphosphate. It means they are actually asking about our reversible reaction where our DHAP and glycerol 3-phosphate combines to form fructose 1,6-biphosphate. Correct? As you can see, this aldolase enzyme is reversible. So that is the same enzyme which carries out both the reaction. Correct? Okay. Now if you see aldol condensation reaction, it is condensation. So basically we can easily from this only find out, because in aldol condensation, a molecule which is aldehyde or ketone will combine to form a molecule which is having some carbonyl group. Yes or no? As you can see here we are having an acetone, that is a keto group. Here we are having an aldehyde group, and here we are having a fructose, means it is going to be carbonyl, double bond O, C double bond O, correct? So this will definitely be an aldol condensation reaction. Yes or no? Because Grignard reaction is wherein we are going to add certain atoms, where we are going to add certain metal molecules, which is not required here. Similarly, free radical reaction is no need to require, because there is no free radicals in this molecule. Hydrolytic reaction not, because hydrolytic means break down, because our reaction is not breaking reaction, correct? So our correct answer will be aldol condensation only. See, this is not there in most of the books, but in energy they are given that it carries out aldol condensation. The reaction mechanism is similar to aldol condensation. Okay, I hope this is understood. So let's quickly go to question number 5. Okay. The similarities between mitogenic stimulation by EGF and depolarization of the membrane of the skeletal muscle cell by acetylcholine are dash. Okay. Now, first of all, I will tell you, section B questions, you can skip questions. See, why I am saying is because this particular topic is usually comes under signaling pathway of cell biology, which most of the biological syllabus, like in your microbiology syllabus, you might have not heard about it. It is not heard. You might have heard. You would have heard, but you might have not given much attention to this topic. Okay, so if you see such questions, you can easily skip them, because we just have to attempt 60 questions. But here we will just discuss what this means. First, let's understand what is EGF. EGF is nothing but epidermal growth factor. It is a mitogen. Mitogen means it is a molecule which can bind to which can stimulate the transcription of certain genes. I'll just take you to the pathway. I think you're scared by looking at this pathway, but definitely don't be scared, because we don't have to understand so much of things. Just few topics, few particular concepts we need to understand. Just look here. This blue color small balls are nothing but our EGF. This is the epidermal growth factor, and this is a cell membrane, these blue ones, and these are this particular handle like thing are nothing but our ligand, which is called as EGFR, that is EGF receptor. Now, once this molecule binds to this receptor gets activated by phosphorylation, and later on it going to activate all the RAS, RAF, MEK, and all these hormones and all these particular molecules. These are all signaling molecules, which it's like a cascade. If one get activated, next will get activated, next will get, it's like that. Okay, and finally it will go to your nucleus and it will allow for cell proliferation. That is the main function of this EGF. EGF molecule, it binds to our receptor, and then there is a cascade of signaling activation all things, and then there is cell proliferation. Okay, now that is understood. Let's come to study what is this acetylcholine and what is this skeletal muscle thing and what is this depolarization. Let's understand that. There is some ion channels in your skeletal muscles. The same happens even in your neurons. Okay, there are certain ion channels which are closed. Now, when these things are closed, acetylcholine is actually a neurotransmitter. This molecule, this red one over here, is, let's consider this as acetylcholine. Now, once this acetylcholine molecule binds here, okay, as you can see over here, see, once it binds here, what happens? Okay, here, there is a conformation change. Okay, there is a conformation change. I can see this is exactly how acetylcholine works. There is a conformation change, and now the channel gets opened up. Okay. Can you see how the channel gets opened up? When it is bound with this channel gets opened up, and then once channel is opened up, this particular molecule is nothing but sodium molecules. Okay, this Na molecules, what will happen to them? These Na molecules will get inside, and this will lead to the depolarization of the membrane. And what is happening in the membrane? So in the membrane of skeletal muscles as well as in your neurons, you are going to have certain ion channels, which will, when acetylcholine bind to them, these channels get opened up, Na plus goes inside, and there is depolarization. So the question is asked about what is the similarity between these two. These were EGF pathway. Okay, we studied acetylcholine depolarization. Now they are asking what is the similarity. As we can see, both the pathways were exactly different. EGF there was a molecule which bind to receptor and there is activation, but in acetylcholine there was an ions, yes or no, which will bind to some receptor on the membrane and then there is opening of gates. So it's entirely different, correct? But there one important similarity, and that is what they are asking here. See the first option, essentially early step, an ion influx across the plasma membrane receptor. As we discussed, in case of acetylcholine there was an influx, Na plus ion was getting inside, but that doesn't happen in EGF, so this option cannot be similarity, so it is crossed. Coming to the second one, ligand mediated conformational change in the receptor of responding cell. Okay, it can be, because we can see even in EGF there was a ligand binding and that led to conformational change in the receptor. Why? Because in EGF that receptor got phosphorylated, there was a change. In case of acetylcholine, when acetylcholine bound to that receptor, what happened? The receptor conformation change, the receptor ion get opened. So this will be the similarity, as we can see. But then we have to do the next options. It occurs independently without ligand. No, there is ligand. This definitely will not going to be the correct answer. Mainly dependent on regulatory RNA binding sequence. There is no regulatory RNA binding sequences in both this. This also not. That can be definitely be a difference, but cannot be a similarity. Okay, fine. So we have got our answer and hope you might have understood. So again, I will tell you, if you think you know a little bit of this, you go ahead with such questions. Otherwise, simply skip, because for every, see, when we solve question we get 3 marks, but then when we lose question a wrong answer, then we will have to lose 1 mark, and if you do for 3 questions, again 1 question mark is entirely lost. Okay, so you have to keep this in mind. Okay, shall I move to the question number 6? Okay, here also there is one more question which is most of the students might have not studied, because this particular topics are usually covered in MSc. Okay, they are not actually covered in BSc level. Let's go to the question. The KDEL sequence of the ER luminal protein is responsible for a dash. Okay, so what is these things? KDEL, this KDEL is nothing but the short form of certain amino acids. When you have said amino acids, you might have studied that amino acids have a 3-letter short name. For example, for lysine you have LYS, yes or no? You have ASP. So all these were 3-letter short names. Along with that, you also have 1-letter short name, and that is this KDEL. K is for lysine, D is for aspartate, E is for glutamate, and L is for leucine. So it's basically a small peptide which is having 4 amino acids. Okay, and this is playing an important role in your ER. Now this particular luminal proteins means what? Those proteins which has to be in the lumina or in the matrix of ER. Okay, now what is the function of this sequence in those proteins? As we know, endoplasmic reticulum is a site. Once the ribosomes will synthesize the proteins and the proper folding and all those things takes place in ER, right? And then ER will pack it and send through a vesicle, it will send it to Golgi where it will be transported. Yes or no? But along with other proteins, there will be proteins which has to be in the ER lumina. Yes or no? There will be some protein which has to be in the ER lumina, and by mistake, if that protein go to Golgi, then what will happen? And then the function of KDEL comes. So if such protein, like over here, let's see, this is a protein in the receptor, by mistake through here, it through this ER, it went to Golgi. Now it has to come back, and for comebacking this, it will be bound to this KDEL receptor, and then KDEL receptor will bring this back into the ER. So I hope you might have understood this. What is the function of KDEL receptor? It is basically present in Golgi. It will find out any protein which has to be in the lumina of ER and then attaches to that, and it will transmit it back to the ER. Okay, shall we move to the options? Option 1, translocation of the proteins into the ER lumen. Okay, into the ER lumen, there is translocation into the ER lumen. It can be the answer, but let's just go to the next question. Next options, insertion of protein into the membrane of ER. No, there is no ER membrane because this protein has to be in the lumina. So this is definitely not the right answer. Quality control in ER? No. We don't know for any quality control because we have some another protein for that. Retrieval of ER lumina protein from the Golgi. Yes, this definitely has to, because retrieval means we're taking it back from the Golgi. So this particular sequence will bring back the ER lumina protein which went by missing the Golgi, and it will bring back to the ER lumina. So this is going to be the correct answer. I hope this is understood. Shall we move to the, I think we'll do one or two questions more. Okay, coming to question number 7. the direction of chemical reaction is best predicted by. Okay, so this particular enthalpy, entropy and free energy, all those topics we have been studying from our 12th standard. Okay, I'll just discuss this. See, entropy we know is about a measure of disorderness, enthalpy about the heat energy change, and energy of activation we have studied, it is related to some enzyme, wherein if the energy of activation is higher of that particular enzyme, then without enzyme of the substrate, then if that without enzyme that particular reaction cannot take place, but with the enzyme it will lower the activation energy, and we have seen it will allow the particular reaction to take place. And one more important thing, we also studied free energy change. That is, free energy change, if you remember, that is nothing but delta G. And we know that we have studied even from lower classes, if delta G is less than 0, then the reaction will be what? Reaction will be spontaneous. Spontaneous means what? It will take place on its own. But if it will be greater than 0, the reaction will not be spontaneous. So basically, if we consider one reaction, let's say a reaction is starting from a substrate which is A and is moving on to a product which is B. Okay, so if we have to see what is the question asked? The direction of chemical reaction, either it is forward or it is backward. Now that depends on what of the three. Entropy, measure of disorder doesn't have a role over here. Basically, if you see, delta G actually comprises of both enthalpy and entropy, right? The formula, if you see, it comprises both, but then individually they don't play an important role. So the answer will be delta G, because if delta G is less than 0, can you see in this figure? When delta G is less than 0, what that means? The reaction is, it means the Gibbs free energy of reactant is higher as compared to product. So easily what will happen by this losing energy, it can easily come back. Okay, but if you see in case of if the delta G is greater than 0, then the Gibbs free energy of the reactant is very lower. So it cannot easily go to form product. It requires lot of energy. So this is going to be an endogonic reaction. Okay, so this we can find this particular reaction. What will do if this will prefer that the product will convert back to reactant. Yes or no? Because why? Because conversion of reactant to product is not feasible. So if you see this product converting back to reactant is feasible more. So that means this particular direction of reaction is going to play a major role by this free energy change. Easy enough. I hope you might have understood this. Let's quickly move to, we'll do one more question. 1 gram of rice flour from 1 kg pack is mixed in 100 ml of sterile water. Okay, forget about rice flour. You might have all done the viable count of soil sample, right? So what you used to do, you will take the soil sample from any of the garden, and then you take 1 gram and put it into 100 ml water, and then you just what you take from that 1 ml you take, then you dilute it further, go for sterile dilution, and then you finally plate it on the sterile plate, and then count the colonies, and then back calculate the viable count. Remember, that is something similar to this question is happening. Okay, so what they have done is they had a 1 kg pack. Okay, I have a diagram for you, will be better understanding. So they had a 1 kg pack of this particular rice flour, and from that rice flour of 1 kg pack, they took 1 gram and added it to 100 ml of water. And can anybody guess what will be this dilution factor? This will be dilution will be how much? 1 gram in 100 ml. So it is going to be 1:10 dilution or 1:100 dilution. Definitely it is going to be 1:100 dilution, because when we add 1 gram into 100 ml, it is going to be 1:100 dilution. Okay, this is understood. Let's read further. Aliquot from this solution. Aliquot means what? Small volume, and that volume we don't know. Okay, was dispersed into test tube in order to make a dilution of 5x to a final volume of 10 ml. Now see, this 5x is given for confusing you all. This 5x is nothing but it is just 1:5. Okay, 5x means what? 5-fold, and it is not concentrated, it is dilution. So it is going to, the dilution is how much? 1:5. So what we will do, take some amount of liquid from this particular flask and take it into a tube, test tube, and we'll take the final volume 10 ml, and in that particular dilution will be how much? 1:5. So we can see the dilution factor is 1:5. If you want to calculate, you can calculate. It's actually, if you want to make 10 ml of 1:5 dilution from 100 ml, you just have to take 2 ml from this and add 8 ml, you will get this. Okay, but that is not required right now. Okay, just forget about those calculations. We have already given that it is 1:5 dilution. So now what we got, we took 1 gram of the flour and we mixed it with 100 ml water. We have got a solution of 1:100 dilution, and from that we took something and made a solution of 10 ml, and we have got a 1:5 dilution. So we have two dilution factors ready with us, correct? Now what we'll do, we'll take this liquid, this 1 ml, usually we take it for our pour plate technique. We took 1 ml and put it on the Nutri-Tega plate, and after 24 hours, you have got how many? 5 colonies. So this is 5 colonies per ml of this particular 10 ml liquid, okay? Now before understanding how much cell will be present in 1 gram, what we used to do? We used to multiply with the dilution factor, remember? We used to multiply the dilution factor. So then first let's find what is the dilution factor of this. So we have two dilutions. First we made 1:100 dilution. This dilution factor 1 we have here is 100, and then we made 1:5. So we have two dilution factors, 100 and 5, and that we have to multiply with this 5 cells. That is, over here we have 5 cells. We multiply it with dilution factor 5 and multiply with dilution factor 100. We get the answer, that is 2500 cells, and this is the number of cells which per ml which is present in 1 gram. So because we took 1 gram here, right? So 1 gram of the flour we will be having 2500 cells. Okay. Now if you see the options, all the options are having per kg, not per 1 gram. So can you convert this 1 gram to kg? Is it easy? Yes, because we know that 1 kg is nothing but 1000 grams. Yes or no? So 1 gram we got 2500 cells. So for 1 kg how much cells? We just have to multiply this 1000. So 2500 into 1000, and our answer is nothing but units, tens, 100, 1000, 10,000, lakhs. It's going to be 25 lakhs, and the option where it is, option number B. It is going to be 25 lakh cells per kg. Okay, we'll solve this question because this is very easy for you, because you have learned about E. coli lac operon. So let me see how much you remember. Okay, which of the following is false about E. coli lac operon? Before moving on to the options, I'll just discuss in brief what is this E. coli lac operon with this particular diagram. So this is our lac operon, the blue color, the gene, and we can see there are 3 genes. This number 6, this particular number 6, this is number 7, and this number 8. This is nothing but our 3 LAC-Z, LAC-Y, and LAC-A genes, which are the structural genes, and hence we can know it is a polycistronic, because on one particular promoter, under one particular promoter, we are having 3 particular genes. So it is polycistronic. Okay. Moving on, you can see this particular orange color here. This orange color is nothing but our promoter region. And what happens promoter region? Who binds? RNA polymerase. So that is our yellow colored molecule, that is RNA polymerase, is going to bind to the promoter. Okay. After they having a red color region, and what is the red region? It's the operator. And who binds to the operator? This repressor. Okay, repressor binds to the operator. Promoter who binds? RNA polymerase. Polymerase PP. Remember, polymerase will bind to the promoter, and then to the operator. Who binds operator? Operator is always the OR, that is repressor. Very simple. Okay. So as we know this basically lac operon is negatively repressed. We all know that, and because there is always a repressor on the operator, so that the RNA polymerase cannot bind to the promoter and cannot transcribe the genes. It cannot give all our 3 structural proteins, correct? But now when there is this plus sign, is nothing but our lactose. So whenever lactose is present in the medium, lactose binds to a repressor. Now it is lifted up. It is lifted up from the operator, and now the polymerase can easily bind to the promoter, and it will go and continue your transcription. Now let's come back to the options. The first option, remember, we will find which is false. The first option is it is polycistronic. Yes, it is polycistronic. So this option will not be correct, because we have to find the false number. It is an example of negative control. Yes, it is a negative control, but then we want to find false. It is no. The presence of lactose acts as an inducer. Yes, that is correct, because we know that lactose is an inducer. But we want to find the false answer, so this will not be your answer we are looking for. So after getting 3 options correct, you can definitely be 100% confident that option will be 4th one. Okay, but let's once again read it. The repressor binds to the promoter. Right now we remember here that repressor bind where? It binds to the operator. Repressor binds to the operator. So repressor, so this will be our right answer, because that is a false about E. coli lac operon. We'll do in the next video. I'll be continuing this. I'll be solving other questions as well for you. So if you like this video, please recommend this to your friends who are preparing for this exam. Okay, and once again, with my whole heart, I would just like to tell you thanks for watching.